All right. Hey, everybody. First of all, thank you for watching this. I wanted to take this opportunity to, share with the world the real story behind how I got into e-commerce accounting. It was under duress, against my will. I did not want to do it. And the man that you're seeing here with me on this Zoom is the whole entire reason. It's all his fault. He's the reason
Oh no.
that I got into e-commerce accounting. And let me just say that I'm grateful that you did. But Mendel here is the reason I am in e-commerce accounting at all, serving clients in the e-commerce space. One of my clients was just recently on Shark Tank, Swift Paws, they're called. And so it's been an amazing journey. And I look back and I remember how reluctant I was, but I don't have a single regret. Let's be clear about that. Mendel, you're the reason I'm here. You're the reason I got into e-commerce. And I would love to have you share a little bit about, we met through a mutual friend, but I think you were already familiar with my videos from before that. So I'm going to shut up and let you kind of explain like what brought you to me in the first place.
First, it's great to be here, and thank you for inviting me to do this with you. You mentioned that you're here because of me. The only correction I would make is you're here because you provided amazing content and resources for your customers and for new potential customers. Mm-hmm. That's why you're here, and take some credit for that. And the reason why that is because I saw one of those videos. That's really why how I met you. We had a mutual friend, but I think ultimately it came down to the videos that you put out for free that explain kind of your bulletproof bookkeeping and how you work backwards from the balance sheet and some of the stuff that if any of your watchers are familiar with or new people, simplified bookkeeping, command of QuickBooks Online, your command of explaining things, and it was interesting. So that's how I found you, and how I found you is probably like every other business owner, small business owner, or even medium-sized business, struggling to find someone competent in the bookkeeping space is difficult in any business, let alone in the most complex, I would say, bookkeeping world in e-commerce. Even more so in not just e-commerce, let's say a Shopify business, but an Amazon business or an eBay business or a Walmart business, right, which has so much complexities and processes and on how they send you money. They almost do it on purpose to make it difficult for you to try and realize if you're actually making any money sometimes. Yeah. That's just a conspiracy theory. But
so, all right. So you came to me because you're struggling. It's hard enough to find a bookkeeper that can do, good work in any industry. But then, like you said, go ahead.
I went through before you 5 or 10 at least, so to say, experts. I even hired a real expert, paid him a lot of money to come into my office and figure out my books and figure it out. And he came with all the types of medals. He used to work for Pepsi, actually, in their finance department. It's a large part of the degree, but and he was a good guy, and all the people I think I worked with were good people, but Amazon and the complexities of e-commerce was just too much. And either they threw in the towel or they did work chop shop that I didn't love. You want to see these reports often. You want to see them accurately. We'll get into maybe a little bit later if you remember the nightmare of splitting a settlement report because Amazon.
Yeah. Yep. All the apps solve for that now, by the way. They didn't then. And yeah. And I did. I just had to edit my pivot table to divide it up. But yeah, that was
because you're a business owner, you want to see your finances the right month, the right reporting, and then it wasn't. Amazon sends you every 2 weeks. They don't care about the end of the month,
right?
And you created a system. So everyone had their own issues, and then let alone we were trying to tackle inventory too, and that's taking inventory, and QuickBooks is not great for inventory. And you still trying to get it right? A lot of companies skip over accuracy of inventory. They just kind of make these big adjustments, which might be the smarter way, of doing things ultimately. And I'm sure you perfected your own process. We kind of do that a little bit more now. We kind of gave up following inventory in QuickBooks, and we use a different inventory system, actually, which maybe we'll talk about. And struggled a lot. And we were growing. So it made it even more difficult. And without good, clean books, you cannot grow your e-commerce business. You cannot know where you're making money, losing money. You're making your decisions, not in time and not executing properly.
Yep.
And I harassed you. Literally, you turned me away as you said, no, I'm busy. I have my clients, your real estate clients at the time.
Yeah.
And I begged you and I said, please, I think this is going to be worth it. I think told you that if you could get into this space,
Yeah.
no one's doing this. So you
Yep.
can get in and it could be a market that you can conquer. And I said, I'll help you get the market, because I'm a guy that knows people in the business. I still want to help you with that, especially now that you're actually jumping in. I'd love to give you some referrals.
I would love them. Yeah.
I know people that still need help.
Yep.
And eventually I think I convinced you.
Well, I'll tell you what happened on my end, because I remember it so well. I actually remember I was on jury duty one week while this was going on, while you were trying to get me to do it. And I kept turning your way saying, like you say, it wasn't personal, of course. I was just like, e-commerce is not my thing. I was one who was willing to acknowledge it's a very specialized area that requires that somebody have experience with it. And yes, I have a very deep and very solid foundation in the accounting fundamentals. So yes, I can figure it out. I'm smart enough if I put the effort, but my honest feeling was you'd be better off finding somebody that actually had the experience. And there are people who do it, but they're hard to come by. And so here's what I learned. I remember I was on a break during jury duty, and I had a couple of people's numbers who I knew of who were e-commerce accounting experts. And I called them, and one of them answered the phone, knew of me, same as you, just from YouTube and everything. And she was like, oh my God, Seth, David, it would be amazing to be able to work with you. I would love to have that opportunity. She said, but I'm honestly just up to my eyeballs already in e-commerce client work, and I had several other similar conversations. So then I'm like, okay, it's not hard to do the math on this. There's clearly a very high level of demand and a very short supply. So Economics 101 says, okay, do this. And if I remember correctly, I went back to you eventually. I said, all right, Mendel, I'm going to do this, but you have to understand, I'm going to be learning on you. Like, it's going to be slow. You'll need to be patient with me. But I will get it figured out, because when I do it, it's going to be bulletproof, bottom line. I'm not going to do it any other way, but that takes extra time.
Yeah, I think that we started probably out with you at a 4 or 5 million run rate a year, and then we probably got all the way up till 10. Right. So pretty significant growth as far as I remember. It's been a couple of years.
Yeah.
And then getting around the 10 million mark and kind of growing, and our expenses growing a lot, and our kind of the different people. I think there was a little bit of outgrowing, not your expertise, but the out of office, being in our office, holding down the fort was the main reason for change.
Yeah. I
needed to be able to, at any moment, such a fast company, to call in someone that can help me on the dime. And I think we brought in our internal team. We brought in an internal bookkeeper to start it out with, now eventually a finance director. And if you remember the first few months that we kind of did that transition, they were just learning everything from you. You were teaching them our process. You were teaching them our systems. Yep. A lot of those systems and processes that we're using today, your famous pivot table,
that's amazing.
Sales receipt, we're using literally today, and we're doing much more than 10 million in revenue, thank God.
Right.
Well beyond that, and it's using the same system that you built. So yeah, it's just been an amazing journey with you all along. And from a recommendation standpoint, I mean, there's no one better than you when it comes to down to the penny, down to the organization, down to the specific piece. And you mentioned it earlier. You're someone that if you want to figure it out, you will, which is good to have someone on your side. You have to wanting to figure it out, but there's no issue in QuickBooks or issue in e-commerce that Seth, that you can't figure out. That's a fact. We know that already. That we know.
Right.
Like nothing.
Yep.
It might take you a few days to let me come up with something, but.
Yep. One very proud moment that I remember experiencing myself was at one point. I remember you were kind of questioning the sales numbers, and you were like, how do we know we're not missing anything? Right. And I remember saying, Mendel, let me show you something. Right. And I shared my screen with you, and I showed you the balance sheet in QuickBooks. And I said, here's how we make sure that we never miss a single sale or a dollar of payment, is in my whole, what I'm teaching in this course now, I'm calling it my Bulletproof e-commerce accounting workflow. Right. And it depends heavily on clearing accounts. Right.
Yeah.
And I remember I showed you how we
use those clearing accounts still today. Yeah.
Yep. And we reconcile them to zero. Right. Yeah. That's how we know, because sales minus payments equals zero. Always, every time, all day long, every day of the week, even on the Sabbath. Right. Sales minus payments equals zero. We just don't do those things on the Sabbath. Right. But, so that was, I remember when I showed you that, I could tell from your reaction that you were like, holy cow, like, yeah, this is rock solid. It's bulletproof, right? There's no way to miss something. If we miss something, we'll know about it, and then it may be a decision of whether or not it's worth researching, right?
Yep.
But you know my rule about that. It's almost
Yep.
always worth researching because of the simple math of it, So that is, I remember that well. And I remember feeling good that, okay, I built a good system.
Yeah.
Here's a guy who is,
you took it very personal. You were very whenever I got a little bit uneasy, which every business owner does because they're all different types of crap. I remember you took it personal to show me that you were right, and you were always right. So,
well, I look, it's like, it's my baby, right? I want you to tell me that my baby is beautiful.
Yeah.
At the end of the day,
even when it's not, or no.
and I built a system, and I, what I wanted to say was, you should be skeptical.
Yeah.
Right. As a business owner, you should be skeptical because you're going to have to be so confident in your numbers that you can speak confidently to potential investors and banks who might be looking at giving you money, right?
Yeah.
But if you don't have the confidence to be able to tell them, I know these numbers are rock solid, and I know that they fairly present the financial position of my company as of a given day over a period of time, right? Then you have to have that kind of confidence. And the only way you're going to get it is being skeptical with somebody like me. And then I have to, so I'm the first sort of line of defense. I have to be ridiculously confident. I have to be able to say, no, Mendel, let me show you what my process is for how I can prove every number on the balance sheet and the P&L.
Yeah. You can't have a dashboard of product. You can't have a dashboard of, insight without incredible bookkeeping. It starts with the bookkeeping.
Yeah.
So, that was fun. But I think towards the tail end, we were talking a lot about, more future business than the actual process of the bookkeeping and the recording and, inventory and all that. So.
Anybody not seen the episode of Shark Tank yet? Ooh. Not seen it yet. Okay.
Ooh.
All right, good. Then we have some work to do.
All right.
We have Meghan here live with us. So Meghan, I'm sure the first thing everybody's kind of curious about is just, even though of course you shared about it in the podcast, but for the sake of everyone here and those who haven't listened to the podcast episode yet, why don't we start by having you kind of just share a little bit, share the story of how you ended up on Shark Tank, and then just about the general experience of being on Shark Tank. What was that all like?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it really was a whirlwind. So every single entrepreneur's Shark Tank journey is going to be different. I have now been fortunate enough to be connected with a few other founders who have gone on the show, and we kind of trade notes, and it's a very different experience for everybody. But for me, and here we go, I'll show you Piper. I've got to see Piper. For me and for the real star here, which is this one, Miss Piper, her cardboard cutout is behind me too, but that's obviously not the real Piper, although she made a very adorable face for her cardboard cutout. But the Shark Tank experience for me started with one of their producers reaching out via my website's just general email form. And they reached out and they said, hey, have you ever thought of applying to be on Shark Tank? And, it's like, I think anybody who has an idea or has started a business and is aware of the show has thought about going on Shark Tank. And especially at this point, so SwiftPaws, this is our 10th year in business. We originally formed in 2012. It's been a long journey. And I would be totally lying if I hadn't said that I dreamed of one day standing up there in front of the sharks. But ultimately, I think one of the biggest reasons, because they do open casting. I mean, they prior to COVID, they would have literal open casting. You could go in person and pitch to the producers and work your way through the interview rounds and make it on the show. And then after COVID, they did it all online. It's an online application and then phone calls and videos. The process is a pretty intense one. So for last year, they reached out, but they reached out in, I think it was early August. And then by the time I got through everything, because whether they reach out or not, the application process is the same. It's not like they're calling you up saying, we want you on the show. No, they're just saying hey, this could be an opportunity. Have you ever thought of applying? If you decide to apply, you are with everybody else who's applying. There's no shortcut. There's no fast track. You've got to apply. And if you really want it, you've got to go for it. So from the time they contacted me, I actually ended up in front of the sharks taping for Shark Tank at the end of September. So it was a very quick, 6, 7, 8 weeks of time. But I'm so thankful that it wasn't longer because I only had that long to panic and worry about it.
So I mean, obviously, I'm very much in touch with the process of preparing the numbers, but the truth is, I don't take any of the credit, Meghan. I think you really had it all together yourself. I mean, I know I probably helped here and there, but so what was that like? Was it, was it difficult? Was it overwhelming? I mean, you had probably a bit of an advantage because, as anybody who listens to the podcast will note, you were learning to use spreadsheets at the age of 8 years old, which is so impressive.
Yeah, so mom did a couple things. Mom and dad did a couple things when I was 8 years old. They took me into the bank and they opened up a Roth IRA, my own Roth IRA, because they thought that was very important and that it would instill good habits. And they explained to me what it was. And then it was the first year that I think I was like doing like odd jobs for a neighbor or something. They're like, well, you're earning money now. Let's set you up a Roth IRA. And then the other thing is mom sat me down in front. I think she just saw that I was really curious about like finances, and I would like do little bake sales and stuff if we had a garage sale. And so she sat me down in front of an Excel spreadsheet. My parents, my dad used to, run a business, and mom would kind of do the books. And so she sat me down and she said, okay, like if you had a business and you were, I don't know, breeding fish or something, and here's your expenses, and and she taught me how to create that. And so my modeling to this day is still fairly simplistic. Seth helps me out a lot with that, but I'm a big picture, I'm a whole picture person. I'm pretty good with having a general idea of where things are at. I know about what my costs are. I know about, so I can do things in my mind on a larger scale. And then honestly, where Seth helps me break it down is taking that big picture or vision and then dialing it all the way down to every single piece and part, which by now for SwiftPaws is a lot of moving parts. So our pro forma used to just be like a one-pager. And it was functional back when I did my first round. I think like my projection slide was like a bar graph. Like that's it. So, it's become a lot more complex, but as it should, because if you don't consider a lot of the moving parts, I think that's where sometimes founders, they dream a lot, and you've got to dream. You've got to dream big. And I always have to keep telling myself, I need to dream bigger. What's the next thing? What am I not thinking of? And it's important to do that, but it's also important to pay attention to the details.
And I guess it's probably no secret by now. It's funny, when I first posted on Facebook that your show was going to air, Meghan, of course, a bunch of people probably don't understand the process, which is fair, but they were like, oh, make sure she knows her numbers. And I was like, we're way past that.
Well, I think the really nice thing is Seth, didn't we work it out? It was about this time last year that we first met and started working together.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had the advantage of having been working with you for, I don't know, the better part of 6 months before being approached and applying for the show. Mm-hmm. So then it was really just a matter of, and I had come through a seed round. I had some idea of investment and pitching. And so really when it was like the all hands on deck, we need to get ready for Shark Tank. At that point, it was just taking what we already had, mm-hmm. and framing it in the scope of the show, which Seth, thank goodness, already had a head start on because of your own interest in the show.
But I'm wondering, did the producers like coach you in any way on how to prepare?
That's a really good question. I mean, it is truly like you're bringing your business into the tank. So a lot of people ask that. They're like, is it kind of scripted, or do you think the sharks are aware of who's coming in the tank? Are they prepared? A lot of it is organic. I mean, I chose everything from what I asked for to what my numbers were but the audition process, if you'll call it that, the interview process, up front, they want your financials, they want your tax returns, they want your numbers. So it's not like you can lie to them. I mean, they want to make sure you're a legitimate business, mm-hmm. And that's not the sharks, that's the network. So talk about doing their own due diligence. They want to make sure that people who are going on TV are pitching a legitimate business. And so there's a whole lot of information going back and forth where you are almost having to pitch your business to the show before you even get in front of the sharks. So then at that point, they have all of your numbers, the network, they know your financials, and they've got all of that information in front of them. So when you step into the tank, it's your responsibility to know them, to answer the sharks. You don't get a cheat sheet. You don't, it's not like you can pull up your P&L and talk to it. You have to, and that's where I think I do, it's a strength of mine that I know my top level pretty good, but Seth knows this. We made a cheat sheet of sorts.
We made a scorecard, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and I printed it out, and even like flying out to LA, I was just going over it, and I knew it, but then you always wonder, like, I hope I don't just like blank, in the middle. Yeah. But you just really go over it and over it. But no, they're not trying to coach you what to say or how to prepare. I mean, they really want you to go, they want you to present your business well. They're not trying to set you up for failure. They really, if they can be helpful, they want to be helpful, but they also really want it to be authentic. So they're not trying to put words in your mouth.
So one thing that I know I can share is not long before the episode aired, we switched you from WooCommerce to Shopify for managing the sales on your website, right? That was a huge move. It was a very good move. I think we can already attest to that, right? Mm-hmm. It took months. But one of the cool things was that we get that live view, right? So it shows for everybody, if you don't know this, in Shopify on the back end, you can go in, you log into the back end, and under analytics, there's a live view where it gives you a map. So obviously you can't tell like who a person is, but you see these blips that represent where in the country people are who are logged onto your website. And I noticed it's cool. There's one color for somebody who's just kind of on the site. There's another color for somebody who's in checkout, right? Mm-hmm. So when you watch the show air, tell me about your experience watching that map just blow up. So we have the footage, right? You sent it to me.
I sent a clip. So I got to really watch it for the West Coast airing, because during the East Coast airing, we're watching it for the first time. So we had set up a monitor. So like we were projecting it. Groundswell has a big projection screen. So we were projecting it, room full of people. We're all watching. And we had set the monitor over to the side, just like a regular, like a TV. We had set it over to the side. Oh yeah, there it is. And so this is the West Coast airing, but imagine this on the West Coast, on the East Coast. So at some point after it aired, people were like, oh my God, look at the map. So the blips on the West Coast, it starts to fill in solid. And that little streak you saw was a sale. And that is right when like Lori pulled out the golden ticket. It has to be. And you just see the West Coast come alive. I think the peak there was 2,000. The peak for that night of total people on the website live at one moment was 20,000 people.
One thing you told me that you did after airing, like I think just within this past week, that I thought was so smart. I'm wondering I'm just curious if somebody coached you to do this, if you just thought of this on your own, but you told me that you, ahead of the show airing, you actually reached out to Amazon and PayPal and whoever else and warned them, hey, this might be coming. There might be a huge influx, which was so smart because they could easily have put a stop on things for fear that there was some kind of fraud going on. Yeah. So it was so smart of you to do that. Had somebody coached you to do that, or was it?
Yeah, and for that, I can really thank Lori and Dan. Okay. And I had similar advice from another person who had been on the show. But they sat down with me on a call the day before, and it was like, okay, here's some of the things you're going to need to do. And let's take a look. Let's make sure you're optimized. And I honestly I had thought about some of it, and some of it I hadn't thought about. So of course, over time, they've amassed a wealth of knowledge of like, here's what you should do before you air. But I was really grateful because especially, so Shopify, they do a good job of like ramping, your bandwidth or whatever, but I let them know and they're like, okay, great, we got you. As you need it, you'll have it. Like, they were aware and they were able to let their
to make sure the site doesn't crash from all the traffic. Yeah.
Yes. Or here's what happens too. You might not crash, but Shopify might identify it as like a malware attack or an attack, like a server load attack, and then they might shut it off, thinking that it's not legitimate. Same thing with PayPal. You know, if PayPal sees a ton of orders coming in, they may think, whoa, and they might just send you for review. So that was in for anybody who is an accountant or works with companies that have this. Anytime you get a big bump in publicity, like somebody's going on Good Morning America, or that is the stuff I don't think I hadn't really thought of it. That I'm so thankful, because in the early days you hear people say, "Oh, we aired on Shark Tank and our website crashed."
Megan, I got a question.
Okay,
Hey.
Russ.
Hey, so you got the golden ticket, you're on Shark Tank. Where do you go from here? Like, what's bigger than that, right? What's the next move? Knowing you, there's a next move.
Good question. Okay, so immediately I've got a couple of things I want to do in tandem, but the big ones are, and this has already been in the thought process for a long time, but now with a little bit of a bump, we can financially start to go in that direction. Redevelopment, getting that price point to come down to like that $199 sweet spot. We won't do it overnight, but we're going to start working on it. Simultaneously, we're launching a couple of new products. It is the hero product is a very expensive product, and we're starting to onboard things like, you know, FlirtFul's other enrichment toys that might already exist, but we can build in a quality way, be proud to put our name on, that are a $10, $20, $30, $40, $50 product. So my goal for SwiftPaws is to be a playful enrichment brand. That means we will carry stuff that makes your dog's life happier, healthier, to get their brains and bodies moving, and to take care of them in that way. So eventually I see us having like cooling mats that your dog can rest on after they wear themselves out running. And I think there's a lot of directions that we can grow in as a whole brand. So attacking that, and then there's some development products that I'd love to get in the works that are like potentially even new IP. So all of that is going to take a lot of resources, but I don't think we've ever had more opportunity than we do now.
That's amazing. So obviously I know and can get the answer to this question, but not everybody else here can. So it's a week later. How are sales? And describe what's happening. Obviously there's going to be a huge influx when it airs. Has it died off, or what's going on?
So for us, because everybody's story has been a little bit different. So we aired by the next morning. So I went to bed late because I stayed up for the West Coast airing, and I saw the stats that you watched. By the next morning, we had sold through over $100,000 worth of the product, and we have our website and we have the product on Amazon. Mm-hmm. And that was about half of our available inventory. And at this point, we've basically sold through the rest, and we're assembling more. So it's now, so tonight, a whole new episode of Shark Tank is going to air. And I kind of jokingly tell people, I'm like, okay, now I'm just the girl who went on Shark Tank, and what is she doing now?
Right.
But in reality, I embrace that, because Shark Tank has been a great place for us to have come to. And now we're just going to run with it as best we can. And thankfully, we have a bunch of resources on board, including Lori and her team, to get us there.
All right, and of course the real question is, how is Piper doing in the aftermath of Shark Tank? I mean, you told me that she's become the real diva here.
She's a prima donna. It's gone straight to her head. She thinks that she should be eating like steak tartare every evening, and she should have like 3 assistants. I'm her primary assistant. So Piper is the CEO. Piper is the Chief Enrichment Officer here at SwiftPaws. I am her personal assistant. And I screen her calls. So I have some, but truly, she was awesome. And people ask her like, "Oh, weren't you nervous?" And I was like, "I had my best friend with me. Like, I really wasn't. I maybe should have been, but I really wasn't nervous going in. I was like, I can lay it all on the table. I'm honest almost to a fault. I've got nothing to hide. I'll tell you everything, and I hope you can see how much I care."
Yeah. I'll tell you one thing that you said to me towards the end of our podcast recording, on the Clear Cookies podcast. And I'm looking at it in my notes now. It's the very last note that I put in the notes, because I think it's so significant. Like you said earlier, a lot of people are going to view this as like a dog toy, a very expensive one, right? But it's really not. And honestly, I was a little surprised that the Sharks reacted the way they did to the price, because I'm like, these guys are billionaires. $420 for the basic home is nothing to them. I honestly feel like, to me, it's nothing, and I'm not a billionaire, right? But I get that for a lot of people, it could be very expensive. But, what you said that hadn't occurred to me until you said it, was that this is so much more than a toy that I'm just going to read my note. I wrote, Meghan's goal is to become the catalyst for conversion around pet enrichment, to create a health and wellness platform for your pets. And that's the thing that I think hopefully people will take away from this, is that this is not just a toy. It is, about a healthy lifestyle for your pets. And as many people say, like, who's really walking who when you take your dogs for a walk, right?
Yeah.
But the reality is it's good for us too, as a dog owner. It just gets us up off our own butts and gets us out there to
And
take
it's
the
not
dogs.
some people think, oh, you just turn it on. No, you are there, you're controlling it, and it's interactive. It's really something you do with your dog.
Yeah, I didn't realize it could change directions until I saw it. I was like, oh, I didn't know you could do that. I'm like, wow, this is fun.
It's so nice. You can change the course. You can take it with you. It's portable. So, and before I see you wrapping up, Alexa, did you have a question? I saw you had unmuted at one point.
Oh, I was just going to say, I put the link in there of a little video where you get the golden ticket. It's really cute. It's really cute. It's only 2 minutes.
Wow.
Thank you. And Janice, I see your question. Did you change your accounting software? Thankfully, we didn't have to. So when I first met Seth, we were already on QuickBooks.
QuickBooks Online, to be specific. Yeah.
Yes, we were using QuickBooks Online, and Seth and I, one of the very first things we did was we went through and really tailored and organized the chart of accounts. And so we'd gone through months of like digging.
There were several iterations of that. Kelly, her camera's off now, but Kelly really gets the credit. She did all that work. It was a lot, right? Because we had a very detailed chart of accounts, which I see a lot. And, this is just my own philosophy about it. Different people feel differently. You ask 5 accountants, they'll have 5 different answers. But I'm a fan of simplifying the chart of accounts. I just told somebody earlier this week on a call. The way I look at it, that chart of accounts is what's going to drive the financial statements, the balance sheet, and the profit and loss, right? And I want to structure my chart of accounts in such a way that when I read those reports, I can look at it and in a glance, very quickly, without having to work hard, I can get the picture of what's going on financially with the business, right? If it's overly detailed, it becomes hard work to kind of interpret what you're looking at. And of course, we know that you can always drill in to get the more detailed stuff from anywhere.
Don't get me started on the manufacturing costs.
No, we're not using it for manufacturing costs. And, it's funny because we've looked at a number of different systems for it. And at the end of the day, I'll be honest with you, I'm building something in Airtable to track the manufacturing costs, because the systems that we would really need are either too expensive because they're too bloated for what we need, or they're not sophisticated enough. So I said, I'm just going to build something in Airtable. And then when we're doing like $1 million a month, then we can afford to, spend money on like an SOS inventory or something.
They're either an enterprise solution, which is way overkill, and like 20,000 is the starter price for onboarding. Yeah. And it's like, what? That's not even in the realm of what we can do. Or it's like, what QuickBooks Online can do, which is like, what'd you buy? How much did it cost you? And how many do you have? So we do some manufacturing. We bring in some parts. We do the assembly. So we transform the product. So we're somewhere in between. We're not enterprise, and we're not just buying and reselling. Yeah. So for SwiftPaws, I'm so excited for that Airtable. We did a full-on inventory count, everything on December 31st. And since then, we've kept track of what's come in and out. Yeah. And so as Seth is building the Airtable, I'm super excited. Honestly, you probably template that sucker and then sell it, because there are way more businesses like mine. I've talked to so many people, and they're like,
you know what? I'll charge $20,000 for it.
You should, and it would be a bargain.
No, it's true. And then because you have also the manufacturing part, and then you have the kit component, right? So you're manufacturing, and then you're taking pieces and combining them and selling them as a kit.
But we're also selling them separately. So
right.
we take one part that is both a part of the pulley and the main unit. And so that part has to build both of those things. Oh, but then you get a main unit and 3 pulleys in one kit, but a main unit and 5 pulleys in another, and we sell the pulleys in a pack of 2. So you're just going way beyond the capabilities that like QuickBooks Online comes with inherently. But I think this is going to be a really elegant solution and a simple one. Because my guys in the warehouse, they're awesome, and if I tell them to do something, they'll do it. But we have to be able to quickly get it into their hands so they can input what they made that day or input what they received, that they're not having to work a back end thing and worry about messing up the whole thing or deleting all of our inventory. So I think the interface is going to be really good too.
Yeah, I mean the downside from the accounting perspective is there is a redundancy in that we record the purchases in QuickBooks Online, right? Those are going to go straight to inventory. Then we also have to record every purchase in Airtable, and then every month we'll do an analysis of what Airtable shows, and then book a journal entry in QuickBooks to update the inventory valuation against cost of goods sold. That's in essence what it's going to look like.
Thank you guys. It's really cool to see just a room full of women fans, Russ and Seth here, who, I mean, welcome to the club, guys. We'll embrace you. But yeah, I mean, Shark Tank was a really awesome experience. I'm happy that I can share it, and I'm just super excited for the future.